today we're having a slightly different discussion. You know that we have always been talking about how we can improve sight and eye treatment. Today we're looking at it from a different angle because we know while we always try to have the best vision we can, sometimes it doesn't always work that way, and we have to accept that we may not be able to restore sight. So, our question today is, Dr. Mattis, I was recently diagnosed as legally blind. However, when I explain to persons that I can still see light and shapes, they say I'm not considered blind. Could you educate the audience on the difference between totally blind, legally blind, visually impaired, and low vision? What's the difference between someone who is blind and someone who is visually impaired? We use these terms loosely. Technically, someone who is blind is also considered to be visually impaired, as blindness is really the most extreme form. So let us look at some definitions. Most of us are familiar with the term visual acuity, which is a measurement that is determined by the letter chart tests that we take when we get our eyes checked. The number represents your eye's clarity or sharpness, with 20/20 being the gold standard. So 20/20 means that at 20 feet away from the chart, a person with normal vision is able to see the line that should be able to be read at the 20 feet distance. Now, visual impairment is a broad term referring to any condition where a person's vision is not normal. It includes those who are partially sighted, and by partially sighted I mean a person has impaired vision in either one or both eyes. It also means the person may have low vision, and this refers to a severe visual impairment, which is visual acuity that is 20/70 or poorer in the better seeing eye, which cannot be improved. And also legally blind, which is defined by a visual acuity of 2200 or worse in the better eye with the best possible correction, or a visual field of 20 degrees or less. It's a legal threshold that's used for certain government benefits and programs. Now, some persons who are legally blind may still have some useful vision, while others may be completely blind. Now, I'll just recap a little bit when I use those numbers. So when I say someone is legally blind and their visual acuity is 20/200, 20/200 means that at 20 feet away from our chart, they can only see the letter that someone with normal vision can go as far as 200 feet away to see. So in other words, they have to come as close as 20 feet to see what the normal person could see 200 feet away. Now, blindness or total blindness is a complete loss of vision. That is, there's no perception of light. And it also encompasses a range of visual impairments, which includes a complete lack of vision and also those with partial vision. So persons will loosely say they are blind, and that is a kind of layman term. But for ophthalmologists and so on, when we say someone is blind, we use it to mean that there's complete blindness. In other words, there is no perception of light, and that is a permanent condition. Now, all these conditions for visual impairment may be due to various causes such as injury, disease, or genetic inheritance. So injury and trauma is self-explanatory. Disease, we talk about glaucoma, we talk about lots of other causes, retinitis pigmentosa, and the list goes on. Now, can a blind or visually impaired person still lead a normal life? Absolutely. Many blind and visually impaired persons adjust to their disabilities. Being visually impaired or blind doesn't mean that they can't live normal lives just like anyone else. Being blind or visually impaired isn't about what they can or cannot do. It's about learning the best way to accomplish whatever goals they set out to achieve. Our guest today is Ms. Gloria Goffe. Now, Ms. Goffe is a prominent Jamaican disability rights advocate and the executive director of the Combined Disabilities Association, or CDA, which is a leading non-governmental organization that's dedicated to advancing the rights and inclusion of persons with disabilities in Jamaica. Now, as a blind individual herself, Ms. Goffe has been vocal and influential in shaping national disability policy, promoting accessibility, and pushing for social and legal reforms. Ms. Goffe's advocacy is rooted in her personal experiences as a person with disability. She attended the Salvation Army School for the Blind and later pursued professional qualifications, becoming a certified professional secretary. Her academic journey continued at the University of the West Indies, where she earned a Bachelor of Science in Psychology and a Master of Science in Human Resource Development. So it is my distinct pleasure to welcome Ms. Goffe to our special presentation. Welcome, Ms. Goffe, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, can you tell us, Ms. Goffe, about what led, a little bit about your journey and what led you to become an advocate for persons with disability?
Well, it can be a very long story, so I'll try and cut it as short as I can. But my journey as a person who is blind started at 7. So moving from a child who grew up in the country, used to swim in rivers, climb trees, swing on guava tree, carry water, all those things that my siblings did. I fell at the age of 4, had a head injury that in retrospect was not properly attended to, meaning no x-rays were done. Later, when my sight started going and I went to the KPH, it was determined that at 4 when I hit my head, I had some bleeding in the head that caused a clot on the optic nerve.
Okay.
So it stayed there, and I think the pressure of it, caused damage the optic nerve. Later, an ophthalmologist told me it is called optic atrophy or something to that effect.
Yes.
All right. So at 7 now, my journey meant moving from my home in the country to live most times at the Salvation Army School for the Blind because it was a boarding facility. So that is where I was separated, at least during school months, which, takes most of the time. So I was living actually at the school and going home only on holidays. But that journey helped because it continued my education, and it also gave me a new family, another family, I should say, where I learned from the children who were already there that I could move about. I could learn how to use directions and all sorts of things. Then the journey took me away from that protective environment and my home, which was also extra protective, to one where I became an adult, started working, being on the streets, moving about, getting some sympathetic comments, some unkind comments, and encountering some discrimination, and also achieving things that I never expected I would. So for me, the journey has been mixed, but one thing it taught me, I learned what discrimination was. I became a member of the Combined Disabilities Association and the Jamaican Society for the Blind, where I learned more that I was not the only person facing these things, both the positives and the negatives. So I joined the Combined Disabilities Association, which was an advocacy organization, and due to my own, the negative experiences I had, and learn about others from, other persons within the organization, and I became sold on advocacy. And I believe that based on the successes that happened over the years, advocacy is critical. And I think I started being an advocate without knowing it from I was at the School for the Blind. And so it was a natural transition, I think. And I think even when I stopped working with the Combined Disabilities Association, I'll continue to be an advocate because it is in my DNA now.
Yes, that is a very interesting, synopsis of what your life has been like and how it propelled you. You've said so much because you touched on the Salvation Army, the School for the Blind, because as you said, it is those, organization helped you in terms of how you could continue life with your disability.
And something critical I left out, when I also became a mother. That was when I also encountered some comments, and I knew I had to help to change mindset.
Okay. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions that people still have about blindness and the visually impaired?
Well, the first one that jumps out at me is, could be controversial, but it's the fact that blindness is the worst thing that could ever happen to someone. Persons who are blind and who have been rehabilitated and have accepted their blindness and are moving on with their lives do not believe that. We used to hear it more regularly before the greater awareness, but we still hear it, that people would rather lose anything, everything, once and live with it than sight. So that is the first misconception, I believe. Although it's a personal view, but I
must jump in here. I must jump in here because I hear it myself. Patients have said to me they would rather be dead than blind, and I correct them. I say that is not so. That is not so, and you are a testament to that fact because you are quite right. You can live a productive life being visually impaired, being blind.
Right.
Yes, people still say that. So yes.
Okay. Another misconception is the fact that you just mentioned it. You cannot live a meaningful life. When I got blind, people said to my mother, "That's a burden you have," and parents, I should say, because my father was very integral to my life and to my development. And people would say that's, oh gosh, that's going to be a burden for you on the rest of your life. So do not spend much money on her because you'll always have to take care of her. She'll never, you will never be your parents' pension. You will never be able to assist the family or even take care of yourself. So that's another misconception. Yes. Another one is that if you're blind, your child will automatically become blind. And although we have, as you mentioned earlier, heredity that can lead to blindness, the reality is that people don't look at it that way. They don't even want to know how you became blind. Once you have a disability in general, it must be, you must bring forth a blind child.
Yes.
So
it's inherited.
Yes. So that's another misconception. Another one that is affecting us even in gaining meaningful employment still, because although it is changing, we're still nowhere where we should be, is employment. Because it is believed that your productivity level will be lower than a person who is sighted. It is believed that somebody will always have to be assigned to you to move you around, you know. It's not an independent person walking around upstairs, downstairs, and anywhere else on the building. So, you know, you have a number of misconceptions that one, traditional and should be outdated, but I know people still believe in it, that if you look at a person with a disability when you're pregnant and you're sorry for them, then your child might end up with that disability.
I don't know how we can get persons to forget about that and to disabuse themselves of that total nonsense, because that's exactly what it is, total nonsense. But it still exists and persists even today. So that I now want to ask you, how do you think that communities can better support the independence of persons with visual impairments? You just touched on the fact that persons may not want to employ persons and so on. How do you think that communities can better support impaired persons with visual impairment?
I think it is critical for the society, and as you say, you start from home and the community, because sometimes even within the home, you know, it's a challenge. So I think the important thing is to get rid of the misperceptions, the misconceptions, and the myths that surround blindness. The other thing is, by doing that, you will be better able to accept the person as having a disability. However, that person, given the tools, given the training, given the acceptance, and the earning their self-confidence and building their self-esteem, they will exposing them to everything else that your child who is not blind, or your relative or your community person who is not blind is exposed to. You by getting rid of those misperceptions, you will be able to do it. Also, another critical and very important aspect is inclusion. You live in a community, involve the blind person in the community group, involve them in activities of the community, and I'm talking about the direct community in which the person may live or go to school, or, you know, any social environment. And that is important. And in the classroom, help to identify things that could be considered or possibility for that the child has a disability, and try and dealing with it. Early identification within the community is important. And just like what they used to say before, it's not your child, but if you notice it, bring it to the attention of the parent or some social worker or some professional that this child will need additional support, or at least treatment, or, you know, some intervention, early intervention. So these are some of the ways that the community can assist. I used to be a part of my Citizens Association, right? And you, by interacting directly with the person, you will get to learn how to relate and how to guide if necessary, and how for them to guide you, because persons who are blind can guide you, can actually direct you. My taxi company that I use from time to time always tell me, the drivers always tell me that when I direct them, they don't question it. Other persons who can see have directed them to places and they get lost.
There you go.
Because we have ways of doing what we do. We listen more. We ask for milestones. We ask for, you know, physical structures that can, rather than saying just go to number so and so, we can say, oh yeah, it's the third house on your left, and it's the third road down and third house on your left, and it's a pink and white house, or, you know.
You give more precise.
You give more precise information, direction.
Yes.
So I think the community, the biggest thing of all is to accept that persons with disabilities are humans, having the same needs and aspirations and some of the same challenges. But their challenges can get worse if you do not include them and accept them as people, just as the rest of the community.
You really touched on many points there, and one of the things you said, you talked about professional intervention, because from my experience and from my perspective, as I said in my introduction, we know that we can't give everybody 20/20 vision,
Right.
and we know that persons need to come to the point where they have to accept what they have to deal with. And from where I sit, I have found that sometimes when I try to explain that we have come to the end of the road, patients do not want to accept this. And I see patients in whom I've said, well, there is the school for the blind and so on, where you can access, and it seems as if I am giving them a death sentence. They do not want to accept. And here it is, you're saying, it is from that, intervention that you have become so successful with your disability. So based on that, what advice would you give to young persons who are blind, or not even young persons, anybody at all, how to move on, how to accept, and how to go on, with their condition, and move on from there?
The thing about disability, and we're talking about blindness here, is that it can occur at any part of the life cycle. And therefore, some people adjust more quickly, with
Yes.
their visual impairment. But what applies to somebody who goes blind at 7 is a little different from 17, a little different from 35,
Yes.
and a little
Yes.
different from 60 and over.
Correct.
Because
Correct.
sometimes it changes a lot of things for you. It changes maybe even your professional aspirations. You
Correct.
have to do something else. So what I'm saying here is that I would say to parents first that, let me answer the question. I would say to the young persons who are of an age to understand that they now have to change their views about certain things, or find out how you can do what you aspire to do. I wanted to be a lawyer, and I heard early in life that it was not possible. And when I listen to movies, I say, no, I wanted to be a criminal lawyer. And how would I see the evidence, if bloodstains here, or some eye contact, or some mannerisms that would indicate that the person is nervous or whatever, and use, So I said no. But then I did not realize then that I could be a lawyer still, because there are other branches of law that I
Yes.
could have studied.
Yes.
So I changed my focus to secretary. And when it became a bit boring, I had to move on. By then I was old enough to understand that I could do more than I had aspired to be. So I'm saying that to say that young people, first thing you have to do is accept that you have a visual challenge. So if the doctor says there's nothing more that can be done between you and your family, you have to accept that. So how do I move on? Contact, or maybe the doctor will advise, organizations that focus on rehabilitation, organizations that focus on the continuation of your education, individuals who are blind, which often these people are part of the organizations that you would be referred to. And then once you start interacting with them, attending their sessions, exposing yourself to training, you will be surprised how many persons can testify, give a testimony of success in that way. A life that seemed like doom and gloom, all of a sudden changed for you. The other thing I would advise for persons who are older, maybe married or having children, you also have to make the adjustment. Don't be initially you're going to go through the grieving process. It's natural.
Yes.
But try and come out of that as quickly as possible, because then you would not only do you need the support of your family to move on to a more, a better life. You yourself have to be accepting their and helping them to make the adjustment. So you might have to change your profession, And sometimes, unfortunately, you lose your partner because you have now become disabled.
That is
Families have been
important.
broken apart because of that.
Yes.
And I am not saying that you're to sit down and say, well, my husband is going to leave. No, sometimes you have to help them to stay, because you have to not be a sorry for poor, pity me. You know, you don't
Yes,
have to
yes.
be so upset about becoming disabled, that becoming blind. I keep saying disabled because I come from a cross disability organization.
Yes, yes.
So I am saying to you, you have to now eventually accept the disability. It's like somebody dies for you, and eventually you have to come to the term that mom is
Yes.
gone, my husband or wife is gone. So you have to now pick up your life and move on.
Yes, so professional help will be
Yes.
very important there, and
And
sometimes I think that's where it's lacking
Okay, go
too.
ahead.
No, I said
Say
that's
it
why I
again.
said professional intervention, psychological intervention would be very important. And
Yes.
sometimes I know that that is lacking
It is.
in our we
Sometimes.
talk about, you know, mental health and so on now, and it's very important to have that support somewhere along the line, because you are a very strong person. Just talking to you, I can see that. But some persons may not be as strong, and
No,
that is
right.
where, you know, you would definitely need some intervention, because I don't know if you had any formal, you know, psychological intervention when, you know, growing up, or it was just the family from the Salvation Army and the School for the Blind.
Suppose I tell you who was my psychological intervention without knowing it. My father. He is not a psychologist. He never went to a high school. But my father was my support, my
Okay.
icon. He kept saying to me, you can do it. He was the one who said, do not accept a 70 on your paper unless, as you grow older, don't
Yes.
settle for mediocrity. Aim for height. So even at university, I always aim for A's. I never always get them.
Yes,
But I know
yes.
if I got a B, if I didn't aim for an A, I might have gotten a C.
Correct.
So
Correct.
my father was my
Your psychology.
yeah, my mother was the one who said poor thing and don't hit her, don't scold her. And if they scolded me, she would cry. Not my father. She used to do everything in the house like everybody else.
Okay. Yes.
So he helped to build my self-confidence. And I can tell you, folks who are listening to this, who are going blind or who might have gone blind, are still at home moping, listen, you have to develop this self-confidence. Your self-esteem is important. You have to know that you have to help those who are trying to help you. And if they are not trying to help you because they don't know how, you need to find out how you can help them to help you.
Well, there you go. There you have it.
One last thing.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Teachers,
Go right
please,
ahead.
you're critical to identifying your a
Yes.
child in your school who is going blind. It was my teacher years ago in the 60s, when disability was not even a very topical issue. It was my teacher at Pointy Leeds Hall School who discovered that I was having a sight problem because I was writing differently. And when I look at the blackboard, she noticed that my eyes started to run water.
Okay.
And she called in my father. And, you know, the story could be lengthy, but I'm just saying
Yes,
that
go right
when
ahead.
you find out that that student is writing differently, the student needs to sit closer to the blackboard, inform the parent, and insist that they look about it. Because
Yes.
some type of eye conditions, that doctor would tell you, they are reversible.
Correct. Correct.
Right? They can be treated. Or even if they're not reversible, you can stabilize them.
Yes. Yes. Prevent them
And
from
if you can't
progressing.
stabilize them, they can assist you in helping that child to transition to the next phase of that child's life.
Okay. Well, there you have it. As I said in the opening, being blind or visually impaired isn't about what you can or cannot do. It's about learning the best way to accomplish whatever goals that you set out to achieve,
Including raising a family.
including raising
I have
a family.
3 kids.
There you go. Thank you for watching today's episode. We'll see you next month for our next insightful session. And remember, if you have questions, just drop them in the comment section below. Thank you, Mr. Goff.
You're welcome. And it was good being here.